Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. British Columbia NDP MP Jean Crowder is no stranger to hard work. She became the family baker at age 10. She started babysitting when she was 12, and she's worked ever since, even though she was a single mom. She joins me now to talk all about her life, or as she says, her lack of a life beyond politics. Jean Crowder, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
You grew up a little bit all over the place, I understand. Your dad was in the military.
That's right.
Where have you lived?
Well, I've lived coast to coast. I lived in New Brunswick. We were in CFB Oromocto. I've lived in Ottawa, Petawawa, British Columbia, and out at Cultus Lake. And we actually were stationed in Germany as well for a few years.
Were you?
I was really little though, so I don't remember.
Do you have any memories of it at all?
Well, you know what? Just really limited. Going over on the boat, because we went over on a boat, the big boat. Came back on it, got sick, ended up with pneumonia in the hospital.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, motion
Memorable.
sickness. Yeah. Motion sickness started early, so. And I remember actually going to the butcher's, which is really quite odd.
In Germany?
In Germany. I remember going to the butcher's and the butcher speaking to us in German.
Yes.
And asking us if we'd like a sample of whatever meat that was. So.
Isn't that funny, the memories that kids have?
Yeah.
These just kind of snippets of stuff that are totally random.
Totally random.
Yeah. Did your mom speak German or your dad? And
no.
Were they able to communicate in?
No, neither of my parents spoke German. But because we were on an army base, you largely had access to everything that you needed in English. So,
what was your childhood like?
Well, we moved a lot. I think the longest we stayed in any one place was about 2.5 years. And sometimes we would go back to places, like we were in Petawawa a number of times. Mm-hmm. But you learn to adapt. And I think that the moving probably helped me with flexibility, being able to adapt to new situations, talking to people,
Because that's a tough thing for a kid to go through. Some kids, I think, just take to it like a fish to water. It's easy. They can make friends easily. And as you say, probably that's a positive aspect of it. But moving every couple of years, that can be traumatic for a little kid.
Yeah, it was easier when we moved where we were living on a military base, because everybody else had the same experience. Right. It was more difficult when we lived in Ottawa. My dad was stationed at headquarters. When we lived in Ottawa, it was tougher because everybody that I was going to school with had basically grown up with each other. Right. So that was a little harder because it was harder to fit in. But yeah, I mean, it has pluses and minuses.
Right. Did you ever consider a career in the military?
You know what? After I graduated from university, it was actually pretty tough economic times, and I went into the militia for the summer. And it was just a summer job, but by then I was already a parent. I was a single parent, and in those days it was pretty tough for somebody who was a single mom to get into the military. Yeah. So it wasn't really an option. I had thought of going into the military to get more education, to perhaps get a law degree, but it just wasn't an option.
Did you have siblings? Do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Oh, wow. So you're a pretty big family, all things considered.
Yep.
Yeah. And is everyone spread out now?
Actually, my brothers and sisters all live in Ontario. 2 of them live in the Ottawa Valley, and 1 lives out in Lindsay.
Well, that is a bonus, because at least every once in a while you can have a home-cooked meal in the Ottawa area.
Not really.
No? No.
Well, we work such long hours that it really is tough to connect with people.
Do you keep in touch with your siblings?
Oh, yeah. We phone or email.
Right. And your mom is still living?
My mom is still living, and she lives in Elmont.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I know about your mom is because I understand that she makes phenomenal date squares.
Oh, yeah. So, she's famous for her date squares. Oh, yeah. When we actually, during campaigns, she usually comes out. She and Dad used to come out and help for 1 or 2 weeks, and my mom's job was to keep the campaign team in date squares.
Really?
And now that the campaign many campaigns have been over, she occasionally will make them up, put them in the freezer, freeze them solid, and ship them out home.
What a great idea.
Yeah, she's a great mom.
Good. It's not so good for the waistline, but it's great for everything else.
I actually don't usually get to eat too much of it. Usually what happens is...
it's gone before you get there?
I unwrap them, take them, to the office, and people, the word spreads.
Yeah, pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit also about the fact you talked about thinking of joining the military because it would allow you to further your education and maybe a law degree. But you ended up getting a degree in psychology.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right.
And why psychology?
Well, again, this is one of those odd things. I mean, I went to school in the early 70s, and what I really wanted to do was do a business degree, and was counseled out of it because it wasn't considered an appropriate career for women.
Who counseled you out of it?
One of the university counselors. I was going in to look at my course selection, and at that time, I think there was only one woman in the business class, right? It was, it's surprising how quickly things have changed because, of course, now significant numbers of women are doing MBAs and all of those kinds of things. But in that era, even though it wasn't that long ago, 35 years, I guess it's a fair distance ago, but I was not very assertive in those days. I was a fairly quiet individual, and so I kind of went, yeah, okay, well, whatever, and took psychology, because I was really interested in it anyway. But
did you remember being disappointed at hearing that this might not be the best career for a woman?
Not really, because I have to say in those days it was sort of the beginning of increasing awareness around, that women could play different roles in the world. And I just sort of accepted what came my way. But, I mean, it would be a different matter today if somebody said that to me. But I wasn't a very assertive individual, so I just kind of accepted it and went, well, okay, well, they must know best.
Isn't that something?
And it wasn't many years later that kind of thing just wouldn't have happened.
Do you find that having a degree in psychology helps you deal with your colleagues now in the House of Commons?
No, I mean, when you've got I had an undergrad degree, right, and it gives you a basic. Introduction, yeah. And I think it would be a bit, I don't know what the word would be, but, presumptuous of me to think that would help me in working with people. I think what it does do, and what a university degree does do, is teach you critical thinking, looking at things more broadly. So I think that's an important part of getting a university degree or any kind of post-secondary education.
How old were you when you had your son?
I just turned 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so very young.
Yeah.
Wow. And were you married to?
I was married, and then when my son was about 10 months old, my marriage split up. And I had 1 year of university at that point and decided that I wanted to make sure that I could provide a reasonable living for my son, so I went back to school as a single mom.
And how did you arrange childcare? Who helped take care of your son?
Yeah, those were the days in Ontario that you actually had access to childcare. That didn't cost you anything. And I was fortunate.
Those days are so far gone.
Oh, I was so lucky. First of all, tuition fees were reasonable. I got access to grants and bursaries. Childcare didn't cost me anything, and it was a wonderful, wonderful childcare center. It was really child-focused, and, they did all the early learning stuff with kids, and my son was so well loved at this center. It allowed me to finish my degree with some level of confidence that my son was being looked after, because before that I'd had him in a private situation where, because I was working part-time, my husband and I were still married. I was working, he was going to school, and the private situation just did not work out that well. Mm-hmm. And I was really lucky to have him in a licensed, public, quality childcare situation, where really I could drop in at any time of the day there, and he was well looked after. And he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it. It was so good for him.
Tell me about what came next. Did you start working? Did you?
Oh, yeah. I've always worked. I mean, I started babysitting when I was 12. I've always worked.
Have you really?
Oh, yeah.
But always. out of a desire to work, or was it just a sense that You've got to...
Well, in my family, you worked.
Okay.
My mother used to say when we were in school that unless you were on your deathbed, you went to school. So, and we always worked. I mean,
did you have household chores and everything?
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
That? Okay.
Absolutely. I was the main cook in the house.
Were you really?
I did all the baking on Sunday mornings. The routine was I would get up, we would go to church and Sunday school, and I would come home and I would bake for the whole week. So because in those days you always made your lunches and you always had dessert in your lunch, so I would make all the cakes and cookies for the week. That was my chore. And I did a lot of the ironing for the family.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you still bake?
Well, I did before I got this job. Now I just don't have any time.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I love to bake.
You rely on the frozen packages from
your No frozen packages.
No, I mean like of the frozen date square packages.
No. Oh yeah, just for mom.
Just those ones.
Yeah, just those ones. Yeah. So
that's amazing. Now, what age did you start with the baking for the family?
Oh, pretty young, probably about 10.
Oh my goodness, wow.
I was the oldest, and my mom was a single parent for a number of years.
Yes.
So you had to pitch in, right? You had to help out.
Right. And did all your siblings do the same?
We all had different chores. I mean, because I was the oldest, I took the bulk on. But I mean, you had to clean the bathrooms and sweep the floors and all that stuff. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you continued right out of university then with this path of working.
Yeah. And I worked all through university as well. Yeah. So I worked part-time, and after university, I did a stint in retail, and then I went to work for the federal government, and worked for the federal government for about 16 years.
And at what stage did you decide to become active in politics? Because you were saying that you weren't a very assertive person when you were younger, and being involved in politics requires a certain degree of assertiveness. What made you decide to run? Yeah,
well, I've been involved in politics over the years in terms of social justice.
Right.
In university, I helped canvass for the NDP in Ontario. But I was more involved probably in social justice activities in the community or volunteer work in the community. But in 2002, I got involved in municipal politics because of a rezoning application that was happening where I lived. And the council of the day was all male, and bless their hearts, I think men are an important part of the political voice. But it was unbalanced. It was all men. And the council was surprised at the reaction from the community on this proposed rezoning application that was going to bring a gas-fired generation plant into the area. And the community rose up and said, we don't want this in our airshed. And the council, although they didn't go ahead with rezoning, their approach to getting the input was dismissive. And so a group of women got together and said, we've got to change the face of council, and we think you should run. And I kind of went, well, what have I got to lose? It's municipal council, it's a smaller area. And I had a lot of support from the community, so I thought, well, sure, I'll try it.
And were you therefore running against one of the sitting councillors?
Yeah. And we don't have a ward system where I live, so there were 6 seats. And I won, much to my surprise and everybody else's, actually. Right? So, just because I was not highly visible. I was doing lots of work in the community. I was on boards and doing volunteer work, but I wasn't highly visible politically in the community. But I also think there is an opportunity to have a different voice in politics, and I've always tried to be reasonable. And I think that helped me win. And then once I was there, after a period of time, I realized that so many of the decisions that were made in the community were actually impacted in Ottawa, and decided to take a run federally.
Take me back to your first day sitting on council. When you walked into that council chamber, having defeated one of the people who sat around that council table, and were you the only woman?
No, you know what happened? There was a sea change. There was 3 of us that were elected.
Wow.
50% of the council was, well, it was a little less than 50% because the mayor was male. There were 7 people, including the mayor. So there was 4 men and 3 women, which was the first time that had happened in that council's history.
And what was it like in that room?
Well, the women were really excited, but again, there are so many things. We've come so far, and yet there are still challenges. This is a really simple thing, but it's a signal of how people don't think about women in politics. There was nowhere for us to put our handbags. Right?
Okay.
It's simple, but it's that okay, well, men don't have those things, and so we've never had to consider it, right? And I really appreciated working with these women because when it comes to federal politics, we would never line up. They're not New Democrats. but we worked together in a much more collegial way. And we brought some ideas, like we took council meetings on the road, for example, which had never been done before. So we were able to work across our differences and find ways that we could work together. It was pretty exciting, and I think the public appreciated it. So, you know, it was, I think it was a good change.
When you threw out this idea of running federally, what was the reaction?
Well, people were actually pretty excited about it because, again, I don't think we've had a woman represent that seat federally. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we haven't had a woman represent that seat federally. And I built a bit of reputation on council as being reasonable. So I got a lot, well, obviously I got a lot of support because I won. I won in 2004, and well, obviously I've continued to win because I'm sitting here. So.
You talked a couple times about being reasonable.
Yeah.
Why do you think why is that a good characteristic? Why do you think it's important?
You know, I know part of the reason that you're doing this show is to show a different face of politics, and I think broadly politicians rank pretty low on people's scale of honorable jobs. And I think we have a responsibility to demonstrate that politics can be done differently. And in fact, when I ran my campaign, we talked about doing politics differently. I think that we can inject a level of respect, a level of intelligent debate that I think there's a hunger for in the public eye. I mean, people will tell you focus groups and the combative politics works. I think you can do it differently.
Have you found yourself disappointed at any stage?
Oh, constantly disappointed. I'm constantly disappointed. I'm disappointed in how we behave in the House of Commons. I'm disappointed sometimes in the campaign. In my last campaign, my opponent ran a very negative campaign, and I won't step into that. And I do think what it does is continues to fuel the disdain people have for politicians. And I think there are really important issues facing us that require intelligent debate. And there are very intelligent people sitting in the House of Commons, and I think we don't take advantage of their gifts that they bring by always racing to the lowest common denominator.
Is the negativity balanced out by positive things as well? Or is it still unequal?
Oh, it's completely unequal.
Is it?
It's completely unequal. Yeah. When I ran in 2004, people told me I wasn't tough enough to do the job. And it's interesting that they didn't say things like you're not intelligent enough or you're not, adept enough or you're not flexible enough. It's you're not tough enough.
People keep underestimating you.
Yeah, they do. But you know that old saying
at their
about,
peril, maybe.
Walk softly and carry a big stick. Mm-hmm. I don't really need the big stick, but I think the walking softly it can make a difference.
Is it worth doing this job if you have more negativity than positivity, more negative experience than positive experiences?
Some days it's tough to stay in this job. It really is. And yet, if we don't encourage people who bring a different voice to it, nothing will ever change. And it is like in the early days where I can't imagine what it was like to be the first woman in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. And even Dawn Black, who is now in the provincial legislature, yes. I mean, when she was elected, I think in 97, I think it was, still talked about how tough it was around bringing up issues around violence against women. And it's that if we don't continue to offer different ways of doing things, nothing will ever change. And so that's what keeps me at it, is that I think I bring a different perspective that, may not be right and it may not be wrong, but it's different. And I think we need to encourage those different perspectives.
Tell me a little bit about your life outside of politics. You talked about the long days on the Hill and how you don't even get to see family generally who are in this area. What's an average day like for you?
Well, an average day is anywhere between 10 and 12 hours. And because I have a riding that's so far away, when the House is sitting, I normally fly out Friday morning, work in the riding Friday when I get in, and Saturday, and then fly back out Sunday. And then you're back to your 10 to 12 hour days. Some days are longer than that. There isn't really a lot of room for life outside of politics. Or let's put it this way, I haven't been very successful at balancing life outside of politics with my political life. I would suggest it's probably not particularly healthy, but I'm not very successful at it. And I do try to do things like, I try to do yoga 3 or 4 times a week, not in a class, but personally. And when I'm home, I try to create some space to at least have a lunch or a dinner with friends, so I can maintain that community support that's really important for me.
Do you have a place here in Ottawa?
I do. I have an apartment here. I have a little tiny apartment.
No,
I have a little tiny apartment that I love in an old building, which is about a 20-minute walk from Parliament Hill, which is perfect because I get a walk in every day that way.
That's great.
And then at home I have a small bungalow that is a challenge to keep up.
I hope you have like little neighborhood kids that you can hire to weed your garden.
Well, you know what? The sad thing about it is I have to hire people to do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the reality of it because I'm not there, and when I am there, I'm working. So
you need a condo.
Well, you know what? I thought about it, but I love I've got a 1950s tiny little 900 square foot bungalow. It's a great little place, and I did put it up for sale. And then I didn't get any bites, and I took it off the market, and I thought, you know what, I really like where I live.
Yeah, well then that's important because if you're coming home to it,
Yeah.
and you're there for chunks of time too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this summer you're back in the riding a lot.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I do a fair bit because I have a national responsibility. I'm the Aboriginal Affairs critic for the NDP. I do have to do some travel in the summertime, but I do spend the bulk of it at home, which is great.
Yeah.
You know.
And do you get to see your son very often?
You know what, we really work hard at that because I'm really his only parent, and we try to schedule it that at least every couple of months we get together because I also have 2 grandchildren. So, and it's really important for me to have a presence in their lives.
Yeah.
So we work hard at that. So what I usually do is when I'm in Ottawa, about every 2 months, instead of going home, he lives in the States. I fly to the States.
That's great.
Yeah, it's important. And I talk to them every week on the phone.
Yeah.
And I have to get hooked up to Skype. So
it's so great.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law is traveling down in the U.S. for the winter, and that's how we keep in touch with her. It's really great. And then you can actually see your grandkids, which is even better. You can see them grow.
I know, and the 3-year-old is right into Skype because I've
that
seen him do it with his other grandma. So, yeah.
So how old are your grandchildren?
They're 3 and 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they're pretty cute.
And do they come to the airport to get you when you arrive? Or?
Well, the 3-year-old has. The 1-year-old
is usually in bed.
Is usually in bed when I arrive. So, yeah, but the 3-year-old's fascinated by the planes.
And have they ever come up to Ottawa?
The 3-year-old has.
Does
not since the 1
he understand what you...
No, he's too young.
Yeah.
He's too young. We're going to wait a bit, and then we're going to actually bring them and get them to sit up in the gallery so they can see Grandma working.
That's perfect.
Not that I'm sure they'll recognize what it is, but...
No, but they'll be so excited to see you there.
Yeah.
They'll probably call down to you.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure they'll be told.
Yeah. Well,
no one will hear them above the din.
No, it'll be fine. They'll just add to the
general free-for-all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard you like to read.
Oh, I love to read.
Do you? What kind of books do you read?
I'm a pretty eclectic reader. I mean, I usually have got something on the go around social justice. I'm reading a book right now on climate change, and I'm reading a Thich Nhat Hanh book on the art of power because politics is all about power.
It's heavy reading.
Yeah.
Heavy reading after long days.
Well, you know what? Don't forget I have huge amounts of travel. Right. So my travel schedule is on Friday I read my briefing notes for work, and on Sunday I read for myself. So
great.
I try to balance it off that way. And I always read for half an hour before I go to bed because it's what puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
And when my mind is really dead, I read murder mysteries.
Yes.
So,
do you have a favorite author?
I really like Peter Robinson, and I love P.D. James, but I don't know how many more books we're going to see out of P.D. James.
I just listened to the most fascinating interview with her on CBC Radio, and she is so funny. She's 93.
I know, she's amazing.
Oh, she's great. And the interviewer said to her, how many more books... will you write another book? And she said, I really don't know that I will. And he said, how do you know when it's time to stop? And he said, well, if you're lucky, she said, if you're lucky, you'll have 2 daughters, and they'll give you their opinion. And I thought that was very clever because I'm sure it's true that they're saying, Mom, enough.
Oh, yeah. Well,
she's a great writer.
Her fans are saying,
please more. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, how long is your commute?
It's 10 hours doorstep to doorstep.
Oh my God, that's very long.
But that includes the trip to the airport, the wait time, you know, and then there's no direct flight, so you have wait in between the flights, and then it's about an hour and a quarter drive if the roads are okay from the airport.
So explain to me the route. You fly Ottawa to Vancouver?
Well, usually Vancouver, if I can, and Vancouver, Victoria, and then I drive from Victoria to Duncan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you ever watch movies on the plane?
No, I usually read.
You do just read?
Yeah, I read because I don't get nearly the amount of time I need for reading.
Yeah.
And on the Fridays, it gives me a chance to catch up with all the accumulation of reading that happens in the office. So that gives me a chance to plow through briefing notes and all of that stuff in some uninterrupted time. And then Sunday, I just love to read whatever I've got on the go. So.
Yeah. Do you have girlfriends? Do you have even pals?
I have pals.
You do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We, when I got involved in politics in 2003, when I was running for the nomination for the federal party, a group of women phoned me up and said, "What do you need to survive in this brutal climate?" And I said, you know what, it would be really great to have a circle of people that I could just really be frank with about what's happening. And they said, okay, we'll do that. So we gathered a group of women together, and it became known as Buddies Group. And it wasn't because I'm the buddy, it was actually named after a little cat. who we were all we didn't know each other very well, and we're sitting around on this woman's deck looking at each other going, yeah, okay, now what? Because we don't know how to do this, right? And her little cat ran across the deck and hit the wind chime. And the cat's name was Buddy, and so Claire, the woman who was organizing this, said, well, I guess it's time to begin. This must be Buddy's group. That's right. So that group is still meeting, even though I'm not. It's evolved and it's expanded. Well, sometimes it contracts and some it expands. And what it's now doing is providing support for women in leadership.
Oh, great.
So other women who've stepped into various roles, there's an amazing group of women in the community where I live. You know, women who've trotted off to the United Nations, and they're involved in starting international circles of women who are fighting for world peace and justice. And amazing, amazing group of women. And some of those women have become quite close friends. And so they end up being a bit of a support group for me just when things get rough here. You know, or they were when my dad died, you know, people were amazing stepping in and just helping out. So
you've always got that network there.
Yeah, and it's really important for my sanity, and it's also really important for keeping me connected in a more real human way, because there is something about the political job that has people treating you differently. And I always say it's a challenge not to drink the bathwater, you know, to start to think that you're somehow different than everybody else, and you're not. You're just another human being, and if you forget that, you start to think you're entitled to something different, and you're not. So my friends keep me real, and that's important to me.
That's a great note to end on. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today, Jean Crowder. Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing this.